Take a trek through a prehistoric jungle. Tour a house that has not yet been built. It's called virtual reality, and as Jay Schaefer found out, all it takes is a special helmet and a glove, and you're off.
My name is Ryan Engle, and I'm the founder and CEO of GolfScope, the creators of Topgolf with Pro Putt for the Oculus Quest. At age 11, I played my first round of golf, and at age 13, I wrote my first video game in C++. As a kid, I always dreamed of designing golf courses and building games, and now thanks to VR, that's my job. In minutes, I can take a design of a course, strap on my headset, and play it. The 11-year-old version of myself wouldn't believe it. Sometimes I have to pinch myself to remember this is real. But VR is so much more than just golf. And even our VR golf game is more than hitting a ball into a hole. The real magic comes from instantly teleporting yourself from where you are in the physical world to where you want to be. And that magic is multiplied when you're able to do it with friends or family anywhere in the world and share that experience. And what excites me most about VR is how this technology will help them learn more about the world in an intuitive and interactive way. Technology is humanity's greatest gift, and VR is massively decreasing the time between dreaming up an idea and being in that idea and experiencing it firsthand. We're still in the very early stages of this new technological paradigm, and it's hard to imagine another technology with as much potential. My goal is to do whatever I can to help grow the space so as many people as possible can enjoy the freedom it creates.
My name is Six, spelled C-I-X. My name comes from a legal name change of my World of Warcraft character because I fundamentally believe the future of identity and who we are is becoming virtualized. I got deeply involved into virtual reality since my first time I dodged a laser in virtual reality, realizing that this is a paradigm shift in gaming history. For the first time, we and our bodies are the controller. We control our avatars. We have become our avatars. I started Live to capture the essence of the self in virtual reality, and I started YUR to capture the health benefits of virtual reality. I stay in VR to guide it to a destination that can be good for humanity, and just not another toy to addict us to mediocrity.
Hello, welcome to the first VR charity debate. I'm your host, Eric for President. Today we're joined by two pillars of the VR community. We have Six, who you know both Live and YUR Fit, and Ryan Engle of Pro Putt VR. And all proceeds for this will be going to XRSI. Now this stream, I do want to thank a lot of people here. It's done primarily, thankfully, of course, we have two amazing people participating in the debate. XRSI was also extremely easy to work with and for a great cause. We have 7 amazing sponsors who understand the mission of this, and it's not just about a little visibility. They truly want VR and AR and XR to move forward. And of course, the thank you to you guys for the past 2 weeks of me nonstop talking about this and y'all spreading the message as well. If you are in here, thank you, and please share the stream link out if you can. But we have a lot to get through before we even start with the debate. Just a couple intros, and I do want to talk momentarily about our charity today, XRSI. XR Safety Initiative is a 501c3 worldwide not-for-profit standards developing organization that promotes privacy, security, and ethics in immersive environments. XRSI's mission is to help build safe and inclusive experiences so that XR stakeholders can make informed and pragmatic decisions. XRSI does this by discovering novel cybersecurity, privacy, and ethical risk and proposing potential new solutions to mitigate them. XRSI, being the first such global effort, is uniquely positioned to provide impartial, practical information about XR and spatial computing related risks and opportunities to individuals, corporations, universities, government agencies, and other organizations worldwide. Thank you, XRSI, for your involvement into the XR community. This was an amazing project, and you helped dramatically through it, so thank you again. But we do also need to discuss the rules of this debate, and these rules will be very simple. The rules of engagement are each participant will be asked a question individually. Only one person will be asked directly at a time. Said individual will have 2 minutes or so to respond to the question. Once time is up, the debate floor will open to both participants, and they will have 5 to 8 minutes roughly to debate that topic. This time can fluctuate less or more depending on the flow of conversation. I don't want to cut anyone off if they have a good point of view going on. Lastly, I will not be live time fact checking anything going on. The chat, if you hear anything that's blatantly egregious, I encourage you to at me in the chat so I can see it. I make no guarantees that I will address any of that, but if there's something very wrong, we'll get into that. But I don't want to fact check anyone because this is not a debate to win or lose. It's a debate to express our opinions, and I don't want anyone holding back, worrying about getting fact checked. But there's also 2 more small clerical items. Today's charity, you can see it, I believe, right there on screen, and it will be on screen for the majority of most pages on the stream. That is XRSI's direct link to donate to. And I would encourage, if you'd like to support this stream in any way and you had any intention of donating to XRSI, under no circumstance, send any money to this channel. I do not want to see any super chats. I do not want to see any Patreon. I don't want to see any money coming my way. If you'd like to support this cause, and you don't want to donate money, just subscribe to the channel if you want. And if you do want to donate money, go to that link that will be down in the video description, as well as on screen for the majority of this. So I thank you for that. And lastly, before we touch into our first sponsor of the day, I brought this up. There is absolutely no winner or loser of this debate. This debate is not intentionally trying to catch anyone off guard with any questions. We're not trying to have any gotcha moments. The only point of this debate is to raise awareness for everything XR, AR, VR, to raise money for charity, and to bring 2 pillars of the community in that have opposing points of view but a lot to say. So if you ever work pro-Facebook, anti-Facebook, or any part of VR, AR in the chat, maybe these other points of view help you. So that's the true point of this. There is no winners or losers. The only one of the winners, though, are our sponsors. And we do want to start by giving a little bit of a shout out to Starcade Arcade, developers of Space Slurpees. Now here you can snake, slither, slurp in this multiplayer arcade game where you control luminescent snakes that grow in length and size. Collect as much food as possible and survive each round without colliding with yourself and other players in fast-pacing battles. Now the gameplay is very simple. You control a snake and that follows your hand in a 6D space. And whenever this snake eats pieces of food, it grows in length, it evolves and grows armor, and whoever survives the longest is the winner. It's a hardcore snake in VR, it's a terrifically fun time, and surprising in my case, pretty relaxing. You can pick it up now on Steam, Oculus Quest App Lab, Viveport, and SideQuest. And I'd like to thank you again, Starcade Arcade, for being part of this amazing stream. Now with that being said, I am going to open up the floor now to the debate floor. Mics will be live for all people. In the green corner though, we do have Ryan Engle of ProPut VR. Ryan, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Excited to debate.
And in the pink corner, we have 6 of both Live and Why You Are Fit. Appreciate you joining us, man.
Thank you.
Now, we are going to start with the first question, going to 6. All right, 6, you ready?
Yeah, first, Eric, I want to thank you for the intro. I didn't know how that would look, and appreciate it.
You're welcome. I thought it looked pretty badass.
Yeah, not bad.
Now, 6, before we get into more specific questions targeted directly to Facebook and Oculus, I think it's pretty safe to say that you're not a fan of Facebook at all and what they stand for. But the question would be, what is this ideal outcome that you actually want from this? What could Facebook do for you to hate them less, or even possibly work with them? Or is the idea that as long as Facebook exists, that they really are just the evil part of this equation? What is your end goal with how vocal you are?
It's very simple. Transparency and honesty. Facebook has an obligation to be honest with the developers on a platform that is supposed to support them. If they are building a vertical app store, it is the obligation of the platform holder to build trust. In addition to that, privacy concerns are rampant with Facebook. Facebook is building things such as eye tracking, which is the closest thing in human history to being able to do mind control. There are several studies to do this. So to keep it as simple as possible, they need to build trust with both their users and their developers, and they've done a terrible job of that so far. With my story, several other developers, and even what they did with forcing the Facebook login. They need to build trust if they want to win virtual reality.
Thank you very much. Now I am going to open up the debate floor. I'm going to start with Ryan, though. Do you have any rebuttal or anything you want to go back and forth with?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree with 100%. Trust and honesty are critical. And it's interesting because my experience with Facebook is very different. And, you know, they've been very forthcoming. They've shared new features with us. They've shared what they're working on next. The people working at Facebook that we work with are constantly asking for our feedback, even though, you know, we're a team of like 4 people and a relatively small company. And it's been great to see them not only ask for the feedback, but then implement it within, you know, usually months. So it's been pretty positive in that respect. And then the other thing I've actually admired about Facebook is kind of how transparent they are regarding what they're planning to do on the hardware front. I think like at OC6 and a lot of the Oculus Connects, you see Michael Abrash and John Carmack kind of outlining everything that's going on technically, like as is with Carmack usually, and then Abrash talking about, you know, where they see it going. So I think in that respect, you know, Facebook's very different than Apple, who like right now, like who knows if they're working on a VR headset or not. Facebook, in the last conversation with Boz and Carmack, did say that they are working on like the Quest Pro. So I agree with 6, but I do think that Facebook is fairly transparent in certain ways. However, if they're not being transparent with specific developers, then I think that should change.
Can I respond to this?
Oh yeah, floor is open. Floor is open.
Yeah, so I would be very cautious to understand the reason they're being transparent with you. It's for 2 reasons. One is you probably signed a pretty heavy NDA. I could ask you several questions here, which you're not obligated to tell me. And second is you're not building something that they perceive as competitive with either their short-term or long-term goals. And that is an important distinction to make here. I can assume that Facebook is not building their own golf game at any point in the near future. Therefore, you have nothing to worry about. And there are several other developers who've had very dissimilar experiences, who are not provided transparent information. And I'm speaking on behalf of them and myself.
Yeah, I would agree with that. However, I would say that that's probably true of any business in the world. Any business that's going to be competitive with you is going to withhold certain information about the product that's going to compete with you. That's, you know, that's just business, right?
Right, but you're pushing the pillars of transparency as one of the distinctions between Apple, and you're lacking the understanding that this is an exception to the rule for several developers who are creating competitive products. And for my own story, I want to emphasize that Facebook never told me about Oculus Move, and I found out about it the day that Oculus announced it, and Zuckerberg himself told me. In fact, the day before, they were speaking to me about working together. Tell me how that is in any regards transparency.
I wasn't privy to those conversations, so if that's exactly how it went down and they misled you, then I'm certainly not going to stand behind that. However, the transparency I was referring to is mostly like around the hardware and the stuff that Abrash said, and kind of them showing like how they plan to get to the next stage, which is something that, you know, Apple doesn't really do. But yeah, if they're misleading you, then I'm not going to defend that.
I think that one of the things that I have a hard time with is, as I state points, the most common rebuttal is, but Apple does this. I don't give a fuck if Apple does this. If Facebook wants to run virtual reality, they have to be dissimilar than the very company that they bitch about all the time. Zuckerberg comes out and says all the time about how Apple needs to be more open. He says that as he supports a store that does not endorse his own policies, where several of those developers do not experience that. This is the issue that I find, is the blatant dishonesty that Facebook as a platform incurs on its own developers now. And they need to build trust with their users and developers.
Well, let me ask you this. Does YUR run on the Quest?
Does it run on the Quest? I mean, yes, it runs on the Quest.
Can you run it? So they haven't completely blocked it.
There are several reasons why YUR doesn't function properly. The firmware updates break the application over and over, and we've been in several conversations about having the app in the store. It was the second most used utility, and it was never approved for the store. And this was dissimilar to several of the conversations we've had in emails where they have implied that they are going to work with us, wasting a year of my life.
Why do you want the app in the store?
For distribution reasons. The whole reason that anybody builds anything for the Quest is for distribution, and the fact that they control the majority of the consumer market. That's a fact. That's not some subjective truth. Even Steam VR now is dominated by the Quest. If you want to build in virtual reality, you have to build in the Quest. It's as simple as that.
But you can distribute through SideQuest, right? So from a purely distribution, you can distribute your app. It will run on the Quest. It sounds like it's exposure that you're hoping for.
Distribution is
right?
what an app store supports. And I can put the question back on you. Why are you not just on SideQuest?
Because we want people to download our app and pay for it.
There you go.
Yeah.
You've answered my question for me.
That's essentially using Facebook's advertising. If you think of the store as just basically advertising, you go to the store, you see the apps, you can search for the apps. That's effectively advertising. We're comfortable with that. We understand the impact of that. Let me ask you straight up: if Facebook approved YUR tomorrow, would you guys be on the Quest store?
Would we be on the Quest? So first of all, I no longer work at YUR. But if they would have approved our application, we wouldn't have cared. Even if they would have built Oculus Move, a direct competitor to YUR, I wouldn't have cared. That's not the problem. And going back to your issue about we would be leveraging Facebook's advertising, allowing us into the store does not economically cost them anything unless they were to actively endorse us. We weren't asking for that. We were asking to simply be allowed into the store because the friction of the end user to sideload something is significantly higher than downloading it from the store. Wouldn't you agree with that?
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why you're not on SideQuest yourself.
Gentlemen, I do want to step in here.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to break up really great conversation, but for the sake of time, we do want to move on to the next question. And I think many of these topics will actually be within some of the future questions. So we definitely can come full circle to them. But Ryan, you are up next on the debate floor. This is a little antithesis here. I feel it's very safe to say that you are maybe pro Facebook's the wrong word, but you definitely have an amicable relationship with them. Many of the detractors of Facebook and Oculus, they do express a lot of concerns about their privacy. Now, Facebook's not perfect. Most companies aren't. A lot of it issues with some more recent than others. But to you, is there an actual threat to you, to I, and to the VR community here? Is there really a huge nefarious use of our data going on, in your opinion, as bad as Facebook detractors like to claim? Or is it currently the low-hanging fruit scare tactics?
Yeah, that's a great question. I obviously don't know what Facebook is doing with the data under the hood, so I can't speak to that. But I can speak to what I've seen as a developer and frankly, what some of the concerns that I see around why you are and why Facebook may not have allowed that on the platform. I assume both of you guys are familiar with Cambridge Analytica, which was the big kind of data breach. I think a lot of people have heard of it, but they don't really know exactly what happened. What happened with Cambridge Analytica is there was this third-party app that was running on Facebook that was a survey app called This Is Your Digital Life. And it paid 270,000 people to access it and fill out this survey. And in order to fill out the survey, you had to give them permission, give them Facebook permission. So 270,000 people gave this app Facebook permission. The app then downloaded all of their user data, which was a violation of Facebook's policy, but they did it anyway. And then they sold that data to Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica then used that data to do some very malicious things, right? So I think when you understand that, one, Facebook didn't sell anybody's data in that whole breach, and the company that did sell the data violated Facebook's terms to do it, I think it's kind of eye-opening, and it explains why, Facebook wouldn't allow an app like YUR to function on the store, because YUR is able to access controller information and headset information across apps and access which apps you're using, which they could then grab all that data, store all of that data, and potentially sell it to advertisers or sell it to a company like Cambridge Analytica. Not to say that they would do this. I'm just saying that it's possible for them to ascertain this information and then sell it, and that would come back on Facebook. So I think it's actually really, smart that Facebook is being more cautious when it comes to apps that run as utilities at a systems level. And I will say that, as a developer of every platform that I've developed for, which is, Android, iOS, Chrome extension, which is probably the most access you could ever imagine, Facebook and Oculus is kind of the most locked down. The only information we get about users is their username and the name of their friends that have our app, not friends across the board, just the ones that have our app. We don't get demographic information, location information, anything like that. So as a developer, it would be great if we got access to more information, because it would allow us to basically do better targeting and make more sales or optimize our features in a better way. But they've decided not to do that. So, I commend them for that. I think that what I've seen of the Oculus platform so far is it's very privacy centric, and they don't give access to the pass-through cameras. If we had that, I think there's some cool features that we could build, but we don't have it yet. So from what I've seen, just at a pure technical level, I think they're doing a good job.
So I'm going to open up the floor to the debates, and 6, you are up. I am going to hold this topic at a hard 6 minutes from now.
Okay. All right. So let's address this whole notion that Facebook is somehow concerned about data privacy. In fact, I'm going to even quote Boz here. We are going to start with the assumption that we can't collect, use, or store any data. And he said that he's going to do that starting in January. Let me make sure this can actually be visible. So for anybody who has the Oculus application on their iPhone, I want you to go through this process. Open up your iPhone, click on the data linked to you after you search for the Oculus app. And let me show you how privacy conscious they are with Oculus. So this is the privacy and data that the Oculus app is taking from you. How many pages is that? Is that really privacy conscious? Do we really believe Facebook? I'm still going. This is all the data that Facebook Reality Labs is tracking on you. How long is this? I don't even want to go through this whole thing.
Are there any specific bits of information there that have you concerned, or what? I mean, a long list of words. What's the takeaway?
My concern goes back to the very thing I spoke about in the very beginning, which is honesty. We have a corporation who has more users than any country in the world, and not only are they using that data, they are using that data dishonestly, and they are also being dishonest about the amount of data that's being collected. Going back to this, Boz himself said this, and then the actual reality is that they are tracking as much data as the Facebook application. And going back to all your concerns about YUR, what you're saying is that it's okay for Facebook to do it, but it's not okay for third parties to do it. When in addition to that, we made sure to be CCPA compliant, COPA compliant, every single form of compliancy, because we were going through the process of getting into the store and had to provide them significant amount of white papers on our privacy method, on our performance method, on how we manage that data for the exact concerns that you mentioned. And the Cambridge Analytica one is incredibly ironic, because what you're describing is basically that Facebook themselves is incapable of keeping this data private. Wasn't it just announced that they leaked 500 million users' data and information, but they never told us that leaked? And you are sitting here and telling me that YUR, a fitness application that obscured the majority of the data, the only thing that we knew was the height, weight, and sex of the end user in order to inform them of the calories they burned. Everything else was entirely anonymized. And we were literally going through a privacy audit, is somehow nefarious when Facebook has a blatant history of being nefarious with their data.
No, my
Ryan, I'm going to
point
give you 2
is
minutes
that,
here for a response before we move on.
Thanks.
To the next.
Yeah, I appreciate it. My point is that YUR could store how much time people are playing the games, all of the controller movement and head movement within those games, which we know can be used to identify people just based on movement. And they could be storing all of this information and then sell it to another company that uses it in a nefarious way, right? That's exactly what happened with Cambridge Analytica. And that's why I think Facebook is cracking down and not allowing that kind of access, right? To your point, like, look, it's Facebook's platform, so they're going to have this data no matter what. But it is safer if Facebook doesn't distribute that data to third parties. I think it's hard to argue with that.
So to respond to that very quickly, in the Unity engine with your game right now, you could be tracking all that data and Facebook wouldn't know. You have control of that in the game engine, and that's how our SDK works. That's how your game works. Your game works by understanding where your head and your hands are and submitting that to the application.
It's different if they're running my application versus across the system.
You could take that data and send it back to your own data stores. In addition to this, the additional data that we requested, FitXR asks for that exact same data. They ask for email, they ask for height, weight, and sex. They ask for literally the exact same data that YUR as application used.
But the difference is people are running a different application and you guys are tracking that information behind the scenes. It's very different when your application is front and center versus when your application is running behind the scenes and someone may forget that they're tracking it. So
I'm
you
going to
can
jump
track
in here, guys,
usage across
when
multiple
Uber
apps.
uses your app, when Uber uses your app, they track your location 24/7. Don't you think that could be used nefariously?
We're going to move on to the next question, guys, or else I'll have to mute the mics here for our time. It's really hard to cut you guys off because this is awesome stuff. And thank you, chat. I've been reading that. There's a lot of good comments in there, but I do want to stay out of throwing my 2 cents in. But before we move on to the next question, we do have one more thank you to our next sponsor of today's video, that being Fast Travel Games. Thank you very much for your support on this. Known better for Apex Construct and budget cuts and more, the newest title that you need to know is Wraith: The Oblivion Afterlife. In this new title, you play as Ed Miller, a photographer who dies during a mysterious seance and becomes a wraith suspended between life and death. You got to explore the Barclay Mansion, using your supernatural wraith abilities to uncover the horrifying truth of your untimely demise. Now, if anyone's followed me, you know horror VR is absolutely my favorite genre. Played them all. This is right up there at the top. So if you enjoy VR horror, this is your game. Out now on the Oculus Quest and Rift platforms. Steam VR coming on May 25th, and a PSVR launch later in 2021. And thank you again to Fast Travel Games for being an amazing sponsor of this stream. But now I do turn the debate back to you, Six, for a specific question. Now recently, I saw this from you on Twitter. You acknowledged, and it has been noticed by many, that many people in the VR community on platforms like Twitter, Upload VR, Facebook, and more have moved to become part of Facebook Reality Labs. Now, I saw you voice your concern on how Facebook can control the media, investors, developers in the XR space to a very significant degree once they join Reality Labs. What I'd like to ask, though, is truly what's the main concern here? Is this all on Facebook? Because if other larger companies like Apple were involved, wouldn't it be exactly the same thing, since unfortunately we represent companies at all times these days when we're on social platforms?
Could you clarify what you said at the end about Apple?
Sure. The last sentence basically was, let's say instead of being Facebook, that this was Apple into XR, would it not be the exact same situation as people represent these companies at all times when on social platforms? Therefore, these companies are all controlling the media to a certain degree.
Well, you have to follow the money, right? And I think that's one of the biggest issues with our space, is that the majority of consumer applications are powered by Facebook now. That the majority of the grants that go up to developers is from Facebook. Facebook even is active in VC, so a lot of the money going into companies is coming from Facebook. And my concern here is that there's this, basically the developers that they want to compete with, the rest of the developers that are being given grants, that are being given capital, they won't say anything. And my biggest concern here is the fact that truth becomes subjective to a lot of people because they are not participating in that truth. My truth is not the same as the majority of developers because they didn't experience this. And so, further expanding on this, if you raise capital as a startup, you have an obligation from your investors to exit that company. The majority of the times these days, it looks like Facebook is predominantly the only one who will acquire companies. This creates a significant conflict of interest. In fact, one of the main reasons I'm so upset is that after I started coming out with Facebook, I was told by my investors from the VR fund, first of all, I was called the whiny bitch by Tipitat, and I was informed that if I continued to speak out against Facebook, they would sue me. This is a fact, and that is why I left YUR. They were insinuating that they were going to sue me by speaking out against Facebook. In fact, the DOJ reached out to me and said, would you like to speak to us? My investors, again, because of the conflict of interest of Facebook, told me I could not speak to the federal government of the United States. And that is a fact. And so I speak here because the reality of the situation of what a lot of people have to endure because they can't be honest is terrible. And I will not stand for it because I did not start a company to be disrespected like that. I did not start a company to bootlick Zuckerberg. I started a company to change the world and be a better person.
I will open up the debate floor to you, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure how to respond to that. So can you answer the question about Facebook Reality Labs? Like, how do you feel about the specific individuals who join Facebook Reality Labs?
I mean, they're great. David's cool, man. I was part of Upload before. Like, I don't hold this against these people who join here. I mean, my truth is expensive, okay? To be honest like this is expensive, all right? And so I say these truths because I want people to understand the reality of it. But these people joining, honestly, I think most of them are pretty cool. But they also then sign an NDA and they can't say anything either.
Let me chime in here real quick to help. I know, Ryan, I can see the problem you had on kind of responding to that. At the heart of the question, let's pretend Apple joins VR, AR, XR tomorrow, and they start doing these same practices. Are you as vocal back to them as you are Facebook doing the same thing? Or is Facebook more on a pedestal for whatever reason? And that's to you, Six.
Wait, so respond.
Well, it is Ryan's turn. I apologize. I did mess that one up. So basically,
I thought you were asking
bringing the direction, the question kind of brings up that Facebook, by possibly taking these people who are very vocal in the community, has an ability to control the media. That was per your tweet. And the question would be, let's say Apple comes into the scene tomorrow and does the exact same thing. Is this about the practice of that happening, or is this accentuated just because it is Facebook and your history with them? Is it bad that this is happening, or pretty much the standard items that go on all the time? I'd like Ryan to start off answering that first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I do think Apple kind of gets a pass on a lot of this stuff for good reason, because they haven't had privacy issues. And they are extremely secure, and they just seem, to do what they say. But they are one of the most opaque companies in the world, probably the most opaque tech company in the world. So, that's just kind of how Apple is. I mean, you look at something like the Apple Watch, and you're talking about biometric data. Nobody's got more biometric data than Apple from the Apple Watch. But at the same time, they're using it to save people's lives and help people get healthier. So I think it's very much viewed as a net positive. If Apple had a data breach, how would people react? I don't know. That's a really interesting question to me, because I do feel like they're just perceived very differently. But yeah, I mean, I would be curious to hear what Six has to say about, how do you have feelings about Apple entering the VR space given how opaque they are?
We got you there, Six. I think that was to you.
That was to you.
Yeah, I don't appreciate these conversations of what about Apple? Because honestly, they do a lot of terrible things too. In fact, the most recent example of this is everybody's gotten these air tags, right? Yeah, that's gonna kill Tile, okay? And there's a recent video that came out on YouTube about the paradox of choice, where they gave this company, Tile, the ability to adopt their version of Find Me. But that's going to kill the company because then the entire tiled network is built off these distributed tiles. I criticize based off my own life story, and I don't want to get involved too heavily in things I don't fully understand. And I think that's part of what debating properly is about sharing your own experiences with others. I personally have never had an experience like that with Apple, but from many of the things I've read, Apple is very aggressive in the same way. I see what happened with the Peloton. Supposedly, the Apple Watch is no longer supported by Peloton, and that was because of Apple. And so I think the larger thing I want to emphasize here, this constant whataboutism between Apple and Facebook. I think we as developers and users have to be concerned about the truths in our space. And the truth is Apple does kill a lot of the developers on their platforms as well. But when it comes to Facebook, they're notorious for having issues with privacy. And I simply share my own experiences.
Ryan, I am going to turn the floor now just to you to move this along. This next question, we are going to move a little away from the heavier stuff and more something asked by one of the people in the Discord that I do think is important to talk about. You recently, for ProPut VR, adopted Avatars 2.0, the newest avatar version by Oculus that introduced the full upper bodies powered by machine learning. As usual, I think no matter who you speak with, there will never be an agreement on what the right type of avatars are. But it is clear that Facebook believes, at least on their performance so far, in human-looking avatars as their model. Are the standard of human-looking avatars what is best for development and adoption to you? Or is this limiting, possibly expressing oneself how they want to be viewed in the virtual world? It seems Facebook's very keen on human-looking avatars only, on verifying the human behind the headset, and are seemingly so unwilling for people to portray themselves how they want to be seen virtually. Can you speak on that?
Yeah. We did integrate the new Avatars 2.0, and personally, I'm a big fan of how they look. I think they're kind of friendly and approachable, and they make sort of interesting eye contact, and the lip sync looks pretty good. Before that, we only had hats, so you didn't really see a face, and for us, it was a really big deal because now when you look at somebody in the game, you instantly know who they are, whereas before it could get a little crowded and it was hard to tell who's who. So for our game, golf is played by humans, and these avatars look like humans, and it works for our game. But I'm a big fan of letting developers decide what is best for their game. And, I do think it would be cool if in the future Oculus expands avatars out so that you can kind of create more fantasy type characters, or even, non-human characters. I'm sure that they'll have guides around that so that everything is friendly and not too adult or anything like that. But yeah, I think the avatars are a step in the right direction. I'm sure it won't be the last version of them, and I also believe that keeping things open is one of the beauties of VR, and I think self-expression in VR is more powerful than any other technological platform. So I really see that as kind of a major feature and something that I think developers should have the freedom to express.
And I do open the floor to you, Six. Do you have any comments on how people should be able to express themselves in virtual reality, and if Oculus should have too much of a say in that?
Yeah, I think the answer is in the middle here, right? Because on VR chat side, you have people who come in as like 7-foot babies with suggestive parts, right?
Yep.
We don't necessarily want that. And the other extreme is Facebook, where it's connected to your real ID. It's kind of a derivative, cell-shaded version of yourself, which people also don't want. So I think the answer is somewhere in between. And my experience at Live, the biggest understanding there is, in any case, it becomes persistence of that identity. So a lot of people talk about, the value of persistent identity. This is oftentimes talked about in the whole decentralized world. And I think in the case of virtual reality, having a consistent avatar through various different experiences is going to be something very valuable to people. And I don't necessarily like the Facebook approach. Frankly, I don't have a very strong opinion either way, because I don't think that's really going to be, something, unless it's hyper enforced where you have to have Oculus avatars. But frankly, I don't think that's going to happen, because a lot of games are designed by artistic direction, and you wouldn't want to be a flat, boring version of yourself with a t-shirt when you're fighting monsters in some fantasy game. So yeah, I think the answer to that is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Six on this, and I do hope that Oculus makes it possible for third parties to start developing accessories and clothing and stuff like that, so that you can add those to your avatar. Because I think with accessories and more options, it will give people more expression, and clothing is obviously a huge part of that. So I hope they broaden it up. I think it'll be good. And yeah, ultimately, I think developers should have the choice to do whatever they think is right.
All right, I do want to move on to another thank you to our next sponsor, and that is Cards and Tankards. Now, thank you again, guys. Cards and Tankards is the perfect combination of VR and tabletop gaming blended together in one incredibly immersive package. You have basically your traditional strategy game with a laid-back atmosphere. It's perfect for any type of player, where you can either play versus somebody in chat, play alone against an AI, or like an old school card shop, you can just walk in, talk, and watch people play. It's very calming. There are 4 factions, 2 currently available at launch, each with their own unique combat mechanics, more than 80 cards currently available and more coming, completely customizable decks, animated cards, cross-platform multiplayer, and of course you have your competitive and casual play options. They do want me to make note that there is a tournament that is going to be held on May 22nd of this month with cash prizes. So head into the tavern, open some packs, and get ready for some fun. I am definitely in there. I'm in there about every other day. You can get Cards and Tankers now on Steam and SideQuest. It is free to play with no pay-to-win mechanics. Thank you again, Cards and Tankers, for sponsoring this stream. All right, we're going to go back to Six now. So, Six, looking at the estimated revenue for currently released titles, along with the dominant share of connected Steam headsets, where Oculus Quest is dominating even there, in your opinion, why would a current developer ever willingly stay away from Oculus and Facebook? And what would happen to VR if developers started to avoid Facebook? What then?
I think the answer is very time specific. I would call 2020 the year of Facebook reality. I think that, I know that there's several other headsets coming into the market. I think that the biggest issue with that just becomes that the Quest is sold at a loss. That's a fact. That's not me trying to create an issue here. And I think when it comes to the consumer vertical, it becomes really hard for any company to compete. I think HTC recently had some form of leak. The headset's going to be over $1,000. And it basically just shows that HTC has given up on the consumer market. I think that Apple, even with a high price tag, can warrant an entry that is expensive. And then PlayStation VR has also announced a headset. But I think realistically, if I were to release an app right now and I wouldn't do it on the Quest or I wouldn't do it on a Facebook ecosystem, I would probably fail. The only exceptions to that are very good titles like Half-Life Alyx, and we've seen Steam not necessarily put as much effort into Facebook as Facebook has. And I'll give it to Facebook. They're spending an astronomical amount of money compared to anyone else. They're giving grants to people. They're acquiring companies. They're doing everything that an ecosystem should to support their developers, except for the outliers where they just execute them and expect everybody to look the other way.
All right, and as a dev who is on the Oculus platform right now, we'll open it up to you, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Six is saying. Like, we very consciously have decided to stay only on the Quest for the time being, in big part because our team is so small, but it also allows us to really focus. The numbers for all these other headsets, it just don't really justify the effort yet. I am hoping next year that Apple comes out with something and that, PlayStation VR2 or whatever it ends up being called is significant. And at that stage, we will absolutely build for those platforms. But yeah, right now, I think there are some exceptions out there, and Half-Life Alyx is a great example, but they're kind of few and far between. And props to the people that make it happen on PC VR. It's a tough job, and for them to get it done, like, more power to them. I hope that there is more competition in the space. I think every ecosystem is better when there is competition. It pushes everybody forward. So my hope is that this isn't just the Quest show for many more years. I hope that there is more competition and it does make more sense. Now, Six, I'll ask you, given your previous answer, if you were running my business, would you be Quest only, or would you take it, or would you do something different?
Yeah, I'd probably be Quest only. I mean, if you look at the dev cycles of supporting additional ecosystems relative to the revenue that you would gain through them and the potential upside of grants and acquisitions and things like that, as a CEO, I think you're making the right decision.
Fair.
I mean, you're probably expecting a different response, but
no, I mean, I appreciate the honesty. I do.
All right, Ryan, we're going to move on to you, to the next question. So this one deals with financials. If you do not want to answer this, we can find something else, but it was asked, very unspoken. I hear chatter behind closed doors of some developers receiving financial compensation beyond game sales from Facebook or early access to developer tools, which can create an unfair starting ground for an already closed and harder to access storefront, and many people are fighting for that visibility. Now, that is not targeted to you. That was not brought up that it was anything related to ProPut, but have you ever received such financial compensation? If not, or why are rumors like this even out there? Is it scare tactics for the anti-Facebook crowd to get validity, or is it something that's probably happening?
I know for a fact that it does happen with other developers, and you can get pretty sizable grants because I think Facebook recognizes that developing for VR is very expensive. And I've also heard that if you take a Facebook grant, that doesn't prevent you from launching on any other platform. This is all third parties telling me this stuff, but it's from trusted sources. In our case, we developed and launched the initial version of the game without taking any money. After we launched the game, we have worked with Facebook on a few beta features where they would provide us a very small grant for sort of helping them beta test it. So we're talking in total revenue, those grants have added up to be like less than 1%, maybe 1% generously. So it's we would do the beta stuff even if they didn't give us the grant, but it just kind of comes with the effort. So yeah, I know that Facebook does give grants, and that taking those grants doesn't prevent developers from developing for other platforms, according to my sources.
And Six, the floor is open to you now on that.
yeah, I want to address also, this is kind of a side point, some of the comments here as well that people are making about, and this will expand into this. Facebook had actively supported us, okay? They provided us a dev kit. We met them on campus. We provided them white papers on our methods. So everyone who's saying why you are never would have been supported, why you are, tell me, what do you expect me to do when I'm getting conflicting information like this? When I'm getting information from Facebook saying they're gonna support us, saying that they're gonna help us, saying that they're gonna work with us, having meetings with us. And then after we send them our white papers on our method, after we have informed them that we patented this, after all of this, they ghost us, they build a competitor, And then they come out in the last second, pretending to work with us again, trying to offer us money so I would shut up, and then coming out with an exact replica. Tell me, this is time specific and hindsight is all 2020. But if you are having an active dialogue with a company like that, yes, I know that Facebook has done terrible things in the past, but maybe for that moment, I thought that they would actually work with it. And so when it comes to these dev grants, after all this happened to us, after they broke our application and tried to poach my entire team and came out with a competitor and blocked us, they came to us and they said, you know what, if you make a fitness game, we'll pay 30%. That's like Epstein, after he's done terrible things to me, coming back and saying, hey, you know, if you're my secretary, I'll still give you a salary.
We are pretty good on time, Ryan. I will give you a chance to respond if you like.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I believe what Six is saying. I believe that was his experience, and I don't think that that's right. Like I said at the very beginning, if people at Facebook misled intentionally, then that's not right. I don't work for Facebook. I'm not gonna defend that type of behavior. I would assume that there's a other side of the story, but I don't know it. So there's no value in my speculation here. But sticking to the kind of original point, I do think that Facebook recognizes that it is very hard to develop for VR, and that a lot of devs do need extra money to get something built, because it's also hard to predict whether a game's going to be successful on the store. And I think the majority of games on the store, some have done pretty well, and the majority of them probably lost money. So I think, even now, even though the VR is growing, it's a very difficult market to get into and to succeed in.
All right, I do want to move on to two more of our sponsors right now. The next one up is Outrun Digital. Thank you, Outrun Digital, for sponsoring this stream. Outrun Digital is an event and media production company developing the blueprint of VR esports while helping schools upgrade their classrooms. So again, another great cause, also working for charity. Their mission is to provide pandemic-safe opportunities for students to remain engaged in high school activities through access to the latest virtual reality technology, increase student participation rates by providing a positive extracurricular activity, and to foster relationships between educators and VR developers who offer experiences that increase the quality of student education through immersive learning opportunities. You can go onto their website down in the video description and check out their high school VR esports league, learn how you can participate and help a cause who is actively also helping out VR. Thank you for being a sponsor and doing what you do, Outrun Digital. As well as we have another sponsor, Decamove. Thank you, Deca Gear, for also being a sponsor of this stream. Now, if you haven't paid attention to Deca Gear, I believe you probably should, because they are making a huge name for themselves between solid hardware, software, and extreme goodwill consumer moves lately. It's a product line targeted for multiplayer gamers with lip tracking, hip-based tracking, and finger tracking as well. Currently, don't miss their Decamove campaign, which crushed all its current goals, and I have tried it and can personally vouch. It is a terrific product that worked as intended. Stay tuned for hopeful future announcements for their Deca Gear headset, maybe a consumer headset that we've been waiting for. I have at least. Thank you, Deca Gear, for being part of this amazing stream, and to all our sponsors we've spoken about before. I do want to, for the final question before we get to some opening remarks for you, Six, although we will have one more question, of course, for Ryan. I saved this one specifically for last. I think it's covering quite a bit that we've already spoken about. But many of you, people who are in this chat, who have followed you, have watched the development of why you are fit the most with all that was going on with the changes between Oculus and Facebook, and have of course seen the similarities between it and of course Oculus Move. We've talked about this. There are many apps, games, and more that larger entities take, possibly refine, and then claim their own. To you, and you've already spread this truth, so this question might have come too late, but to you, where is that line drawn between common business practices and theft? And where does Facebook fall on that spectrum to you? The things behind the scenes where it seems like if Facebook already has an idea for an app that's similar to you, you're a threat. But why, out of all of that additionally, is everyone so quiet compared to you?
Compared to me. Well, I have been described by many people as intense, so I think part of that is just my personality. I don't shut the hell up. That's kind of a personal thing. But also, I think that a lot of people are motivated differently. I think that, the fact that if anybody were to speak out against Facebook, when it's the majority of the market is moved by Facebook, it wouldn't necessarily make good business sense unless the objective of those claims can move towards something positive. For example, for a lot of people who sit on the App Store, there's no real intention for them to say anything bad about Facebook because they're constantly trying to get discovery. They're constantly trying to get placed on the front of that page. The entirely subjective process of being featured in the Facebook application store is also something that they're working towards. So if it is my job to make money to pay my employees, and this is even more so when I have investors, oftentimes there is no inherent obligation in saying the truth. And in my case, because of the fact they blocked us and tried to basically assassinate my company, I felt that was the right choice. And to go back to one of the posts that I made before, there were several examples that I made. And this post was on October 25th. I said, companies copied just from the last Facebook Reality Labs convention. Oculus Move is your fit. Oculus Horizon is Rec Room. Oculus Venues is Big Screen. Virtual Desktop has now been completely copied to parody to Guy Godin's Virtual Desktop. And Oculus Developer Hub, App Labs, is now trying to completely replace SideQuest. Now, a lot of these developers have not said anything because, again, going back to the financial obligations that you have to run a company, or because you're supporting employees who also have lifestyles. And so the reason I say these things is partially personality and partially because whether people want to believe me or not, I state my own truths. And it costs me, but that's why I do it.
And we do open the floor to you, Ryan, for that.
Yeah, I mean, I would be amazed if the Move team did not use YUR and gain some inspiration from it. I mean, frankly, I think it would be irresponsible if they didn't, because I believe a big part of technology and development is learning from your peers. Our team plays Walkabout Mini Golf, fairly often to check it out and see what they're doing better than us and try to learn from them. And based on what we've seen them develop, I would assume that they've played our game. I don't know for a fact. I do know their founder, he's in Austin too, as a matter of fact. But I think that actually is a good thing for the space to learn from each other. I don't think straight up theft is good or again, misleading. So asking somebody to share sort of secrets and then using those secrets, that's not cool. But gaining inspiration, I think, is a great thing, and that's how technology gets better across the board. I will say, based on what we have all seen with Horizon, it obviously takes Facebook quite a while to get software out. So my guess is, that they probably had been working on Move for quite a while beforehand. But again, I'm sure that they found some new inspiration to do it that way. I would also say that I don't think it's uncommon for a platform to sort of treat their competitors a little bit differently than the rest of the community. I don't think that that's ideal. But I do think to Six's point, I think there are a lot of realities here. And, to his point again, getting featured on the Quest Store is very subjective. And we have sent a lot of emails, and sometimes we sent too many emails and they told us that. And it is, it's a lot of pushing to get your product out there in front of the right people, and figuring out the right way to push so you don't piss people off is unfortunately part of the game. That's that kind of can conflict with honesty and candor in some ways. Well, hopefully not honesty, but it can definitely conflict with candor and transparency.
So in response to when they started to work on Oculus Move, ironically, or not ironically, they started to work on it very shortly after our conversations. I have evidence of this. In addition to using those white to build their own. My issue is that as a business owner or business runner, I have an obligation to direct the company to keep people employed and to make sure my investors get a return. All Facebook would have had to do is be frank with me and be like, hey, Six, we're never going to let you in the store, ever. Basically, go fuck yourself. And I wouldn't have spent a year of my life working my ass off to have Zuckerberg come out and announce an exact copy of mine under the assumption that we'd be working together. And that is the biggest issue there. That is the biggest issue.
Let me ask, can I ask you just sort of, maybe it's a bit of an elephant in the room. That all sucks, but it also is in the past. It already happened.
Yep.
What are you planning to do going forward regarding VR, regarding Facebook? We obviously, the past can't be changed, and you got burned, but how does your relationship with Facebook look going forward?
I mean, I don't necessarily trust Facebook. I mean, this is kind of a personal question, to expand on the fact that if I'm working in virtual reality, I have to work with Facebook right now. That may change, and I hope it does. I hope there's competing platforms. But if I'm creating a consumer application, I have to somehow support them in some capacity. The only exception to that would be if I built some type of enterprise application or B2B thing. So I want to ask you a pointed question though. Let's imagine, Ryan, that Facebook decides, I want to start building golf games. And they go, okay, let's talk to Ryan. Let's get all the information we possibly can about what he's doing. And let's start to build our own. And then they make up some reason to pull you from the store. Do you know what Virtual Desktop's reason was? Health and safety. They said that they can't have a wireless function in their competitive product because of health and safety reasons. The methods that Airlink uses is the exact same. It's the exact same. And the concerns that they had about health and safety are the exact same. They play this game to where they hide behind some type of reason to make an inferior product for a third party through legal reasons. They go to their lawyers and they say, hey, lawyers, how do we make it so this app is always shit compared to ours? Because Facebook is predominantly lawyers and engineers. That's the predominant amount of full-time employees that they have. So they find legal ways to destroy their competitors. And so what would happen tomorrow you wake up, Facebook comes out with an exact copy of what you've built. They've been asking you all these different questions, and they say, you know what, Ryan, the reason that you can't have this app in the store again is because of some obscure reason where you have this one trademark violation, and they close your app down. And then on top of that, they try to poach your employees. What do you do when you wake up the next morning? They've shut your app out of the store. They've tried to poach all your employees.
Yeah, I would be very upset for sure. I would probably try to figure out who at Facebook made that decision and try to have a conversation with them to understand how we can move forward. And honestly, that is not an outcome that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, because to your point, I know that, Facebook most likely isn't going to launch a golf game. That just doesn't really make sense. So I think, I do think a big part of business is spending your time focusing on the potential risks. The risks of Facebook launching a fitness thing, I think, you and I have spoke about this briefly, but are high, right? Like I don't think it was a shock to anybody that they were going to have sort of health tracking system wide. So for your team to be prepared for that is very different than for my team to be prepared for an outcome that's, extremely unlikely. However, if it happened, I'd be very upset, and I would try to figure out who at Facebook made that decision, try to talk to them to understand what happened there, and maybe I would try to figure out how to get on that team, because I still want to build a virtual reality golf product. Or I would start targeting other headsets.
I mean, I'll tell you exactly what they did. They said the exact same thing that you said earlier in this conversation. I'm not privy to that information. They were all briefed by lawyers, and the ongoing communication became, I'm not privy to that information. So we're all just, versions of ourselves going through experiences that are different than each other. And I'm just sharing mine. Right. It's different than yours, obviously.
Ryan, I'm going to give you the final. I'm going to give you the final response.
Oh,
here.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. One more chance.
If it's a
Do you
question, I'll
have
let you
any-
guys go back and forth once, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Okay, cool. Six, do you have any regrets about how vocal you've been about all this?
Do I have any regrets? Yes and no. Yes and no. I regret how people have treated me to some regard, where they've privately supported me but publicly said nothing. I regret some of it. But generally speaking, I think it's important for this information to be heard. And it's hurt me personally to say this information, but I think that, it was necessary for me to come out with it. So the answer is somewhere in the middle.
I respect that.
Thank you both for that. And Ryan, I do send a question directly to you now. There's a lot of voices in the XR community, and I fully believe intentions are always generally good. Sometimes, though, it does pay to be first rather than correct, and due to that, misinformation can get out there quickly, which I admit I have contributed to that problem more than once. Now, in this growing community, which group right now is held the most responsible, or should be held the most responsible, to spread XR information correctly? Is it creators? Is it developers? Is it on the larger entities like Facebook to be more transparent? I am going to ask you to pick one who currently needs to be the leading voice in this growing field.
Yeah, I mean, I think the media needs to be way more responsible and held accountable for lies that are just obvious. I think what you're referring to is that PC Gamer article about the $799 Quest 2, and that means the value of your data is $500 because instead of $299 it's $799, and it's a Facebook for business. It's a for business hardware product, which they've launched before the Facebook account thing, and it has nothing to do with sort of the data privacy side of it that the article insinuated, because that's what's going to get the clicks. And of course, whoever wrote that article, I doubt they're going to get in any trouble, or that people are going to really remember. I don't even know the author's name. So, it's disappointing because a lot of people read that article and then they don't take the time to find out the truth. And it ends up misleading some people. So I think the media just has some responsibility to do more research and sort of try to tell both sides of it if possible. And then I agree with Six that, I think the more transparent an organization, a company is, the better it is for consumers and the better it is for developers. I think they've got their own personal or internal reasons to be opaque, because it allows them to have an edge over their competition. So there's always going to be some give and take there. But yeah, I would say that, overall transparency is a good thing. And I think it's also worth pointing out right now, those of us that are in the VR realm, we see what's coming. We see the future potential. Facebook has said very clearly, and Mark Zuckerberg has said very clearly, they see the potential and they're obviously investing billions into it. But VR is not a guaranteed thing. It's not mass market. It's still tiny. It's dominated by one company. We're still seeing, single digit millions. I don't have any specific numbers, but the assumption is single digit million sales each year. It's not even close to kind of what the iPhone did in like year 2 or 3. So a lot of good things still need to happen for VR to be mainstream. And I think articles that jump to conclusions without doing the research and kind of paint things in a negative light can have a real impact on us kind of getting through this adolescent phase into mainstream. So my hope would be that, consumers do a little bit more research, but the people writing the articles, should be held somewhat accountable for spreading misinformation.
It's Six. Would you like to weigh in on that question?
Yeah, I think that this question can be asked of any industry in the world. Misinformation, is across everything. Wasn't there a statistic that, lies and disinformation spread faster than the truth? Mm-hmm. And it's by a significant degree, like 300%. So I think that there's an obligation to tell the truth. and a more objective truth. And I think that Facebook, if they want to truly carry this past, Apple and these other headsets that are coming into the market, they have to be more transparent on their intentions. The problem I have with Facebook is really that they don't know what the hell their future is. The way Facebook works as a company is they just look at the data and they go, oh, that's the new shiny thing to focus on. Oh, that's the new shiny thing to focus on. To address one of the previous things that you said in this debate, you mentioned that fitness was an obvious thing for them. They didn't care at all about fitness. That's something that they definitely thought is an afterthought. And now there's billboards in Manhattan that have, oh, you hate your treadmill? Now put on a Quest 2. During Oculus Connect 6, Carmack is on stage saying that whenever he sees trailers of people actively moving, he thinks there's no way that's going to reach 100 million people. He said that, okay? And a year and a half later, it's the biggest trend in the world. The reality is Facebook doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, and they're looking at the data, and they're running after every single trend because they have the data on what everybody is doing. They say fitness is a big thing. Oh, hey, let's put a PM team on this, and let's start to focus on fitness. Oh, look like this is another trend, because they're watching everything that's happening in their ecosystem, and they're trying to make a broad market product. And they're doing that just by watching the data. They don't even know where this is going to be in a few years because they're using us as the third-party developers to tell them what to do.
I mean, is that not a good business decision for them?
Oh, it's a good business decision, but I'm telling you the reality of how this operates. The reality is that Facebook doesn't have some magical vision of XR. They just follow the data. That's all they do as a company. And so if you're just going to follow the data as a company, we need to know what is the data that you are collecting to make these informed decisions. Are you tracking my eyes? Are you tracking everything that I'm doing in the spatial environment? They send encrypted packets now back from the headset that we don't know. And from what I showed you before, they have 5 pages of information that they're taking from the Oculus app. So if you are driving all your decisions by data, tell us what the fuck it is that you're tracking and be honest about it. And on top of that, be honest to developers about what it is that you're going to be focusing on, at least to some peripheral degree, so we don't spend years of our lives just to be screwed.
I'm going to end it on that one. We're going to do a couple sponsors, and I do have one final question for both of you that is a little impromptu, but I do want to have a couple more thank yous to our sponsors currently. We'll get the right ones up. The next one being Virtual Perceptions. We'll get it there. All right. So Virtual Perceptions, thank you again for being a sponsor of this stream. Virtual Perceptions is a leading UK-based website highlighting the new and exciting trends in companies in immersive reality. The site is handled by Tom Fisk, who works as a freelance PR consultant for Zapper during the day. Now, the UK VR industry is booming with new and interesting tech, and it is important to meet new and exciting companies which make an impact in the industry and to hear their thoughts or opinions, which this is a home for. And I do give a huge shout out for Tom, as we've been speaking about misinformation recently, doing his best to counter poorly researched articles, and soon you'll see his article coming up tackling the PC Gamer article brought up before about the $800 Facebook list Oculus Quest. I can't wait for that one. Thank you again, Tom, for doing your best to spread the truth out there rather than clickbait. And our final sponsor for the day is Cybershoes. A big thank you for them for sponsoring this. Cybershoes is a Vienna and USA-based consumer electronics company changing the way people interact with and move within virtual worlds. The company's first product, Cybershoes, allows users to walk through virtual reality experiences with their actual feet without leaving the comfort of their home. I have used this numerous times, and you may have seen an Onward tournament we played with as well. Providing a new and innovative solution to the problem of locomotion, a Bluetooth-enabled version of Cybershoes for the Oculus Quest line of headsets has also launched for order as well. The library of games supported continues to grow, and overall keeps getting supported with every headset out there. There will be another Cybershoes Contractors Tournament coming soon. Thank you again, Cybershoes, for being part of this amazing stream. Now, I do want to end it on this. I did not ask both the participants to prepare for this question at the end, but that is officially all the questions we had. However, I do want to give each one the floor one final time uninterrupted. No response will be given to any of these to say anything they would like. This is their floor to express whatever they would like about the state of VR, the state of anything, their opinions that they think needs to be heard. And I'd like everyone to stay for this and pay attention. If you've joined late into the stream, this stream will be posted in its entirety as well as clipped out individually per question throughout the next week and a half. So if you did miss anything, it will be available to you. But I do want to start with who got the first question, 6. I'd like to give the floor. There is no time limit to this one. I'd like to give you 100% the opportunity to have the floor for whatever you want to say.
First, I want to say I'm not actually that hardcore serious all the time. I'm just doing that for a debate here, so I'm not a mean guy. I think there is this expectation or thought that technology is somehow not guided by people, that it's somehow technology simply exists and we don't guide it. I think this is not the case, okay? Even if you look at the Quest controllers, they are like a gun, okay? We are basically demonstrating and being able to simulate using guns as our first use case of virtual reality. Yes, we're moving to hand tracking. But this demonstrates, as a society, we have an obligation to guide technology instead of simply leaving it up to these large corporations who have systemically demonstrated that they can't be fully trusted. So I just want to ask everybody who works in the space, try to guide this in the right direction. The reason I believe so strongly in virtual reality fitness is because for the first time, we as gamers can actually have a addictive, healthy habit, that we don't sit there and incur heart disease and obesity, but that our habit could potentially be good for us. I say that as a lifelong gamer. And so I just want people to think when they build in this space, do it with some type of moral compass, something. I know the end goal is to make billions and be Zuckerberg yourself, but also try to keep some level of humanity. And know that virtual reality is just a device, and someday it's just gonna be a peripheral and a part of our body.
Thank you very much, 6. And Ryan, the floor is open to you.
Yeah, first, I really want to thank you, Eric, for hosting this debate and for asking the questions and for moderating, and 6 to you for debating and being very transparent with your answers. And I know, as you've said, being vocal about this stuff doesn't often benefit you directly, and I really admire kind of your courage in doing that. That's a really hard thing to do, and I really hope that ultimately it works out well for you. It's funny because 6 and I have had these kind of polar opposite experiences with Facebook specifically, where Facebook has, from my perspective, really kind of gone above and beyond to enable us, a small team of 4 people with very little funding, to launch this VR golf game. I've been playing golf since I was 11, writing code since I was 13. For me to be able to kind of pursue this, and our ultimate goal as a company is to continue focusing on golf. We're not going to make another game outside of golf, at least not for the foreseeable future. And in the next 10 to 20 years, I think more people will play golf in VR than in real life. So I think that, as a small company, we actually have this big chance to kind of change the whole future of an entire sport. And there's a 0% chance that my company would be focused on VR right now, if not for the Quest and kind of not for Oculus and not for what they've done for the whole VR community. So for that, I am very grateful to them, but that doesn't mean that they're doing everything perfectly. And I think it's really important for everybody out there to kind of recognize that there are 2 sides to everything, and there's 6's experience, and then there's my experience. And I think it's really useful to go into new things with an open mind, to know that either of those outcomes are entirely possible. And I hope everybody listening can kind of learn something from this experience. And I hope people working at Facebook can also learn something from 6's experience. And then, kind of the last thing that I would say is, it does, I know this was this was sort of slated as the like pro Facebook, anti Facebook. As I've said on Twitter, I'm not pro Facebook. I'm just not anti Facebook. I think it's going to be really healthy for all of us in the VR community to kind of focus on our common ground versus our differences as we build up this space together. And I think it's great to be vocal about issues, but I also think it's really important to recognize that, you know, these are all people. And even at Facebook now, a lot of our VR friends are working at Facebook now. People working at Facebook are not bad people because they're working at Facebook, right? It's very possible that they're going to work at Facebook to try to make a positive change. And I think that's really, really critical. So a big part of why I wanted to come on here today is to kind of, you know, show people that I'm a fairly regular guy with, I think, pretty decent intentions working in the VR space and the VR golf space. You know, Facebook has enabled me to do that. And I hope that doesn't make me a bad person. And, you know, people working at Facebook are real people with real families. And I think, I hope that, you know, as a community, we can kind of come together a little bit more and not try to focus things on the pro and the anti, but sort of meet in the middle so that we can find the best solutions together.
All right. And I do want to end it with this. I think it's important. This whole process, I'm glad Ryan brought that up at the end, is whenever we host these debates, there's a lot of voices out there in the community, and there's a lot of platforms we all talk on, whether that's Discord, Clubhouse is a big one, or any variant of the Clubhouses that are now there, Facebook, all these platforms. And we find that there are a lot of different opinions out there, but unfortunately we pick a lot of camps. And I have recently had a son, and I see what I'm doing now and where the world is going. I have no idea what it's going to be like, but I think virtual reality or some type of XR is going to play a big part of that. And we do no good of getting to where we want to be, like Six brought up, where we want it to work for all by making our camps, which happens quite a bit on social media. So we want to use this platform as a way to at least share opposing points of view on major topics with work in progress, questions that really answer some things that people want. I appreciate everyone who's put the word out for this stream. It is going to be something we constantly do every 2 weeks, and I hope to keep working on this format, making it better, so these voices really can be heard, and rather than them turning into contempt and argumentation, they turn into things that maybe someone can take away, something they didn't have. So Ryan, Six, thank you very much for both being here doing this.
Thank you.
And
thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And that is going to be it. It looks like my mic went out there as well, so I will give the TLDR there. Thank you guys for being here. Check out the XR